Let's finish the job, building on the work of the Congressional EMP Commission and many others. The Power and the Light, a recent book by Dr. Peter Pry, describes electromagnetic pulse and other potentially nation-ending threats, including cyber hacking, kinetic and laser radio frequency threats. It tables many possible engineering mitigations, and these are specific devices and strategies for different elements of the grid. Dr. Pry records the long, painful journey of a few accomplished professionals striving to initiate a grid hardening program. He laments the fact that after nearly 20 years, achieving the goal of a hardened electric power grid remains tenuous at best. The short presentation that follows suggests reasons for the impasse and, more importantly, a radical but practical way forwards, a fitting tribute to the work of the Commission team and many others. Please note that the views expressed are mine, based on much experience in leading step-out multi-million-dollar engineering projects, and not necessarily those of the EMP Task Force on National and Homeland Security. Why has so little substantive been achieved? Firstly, politics at all levels and a tendency for the power companies to play down the risks. Their focus is on running the business competitively and satisfying their shareholders. Then there is a tendency for some within the EMP arena to seriously underestimate the magnitude and complexity of a national grid hardening project, and this has resulted in little serious thought being given to this critical aspect of securing the grid. There is no consensus on the scale of the problem and its solution. This is despite all the studies carried out over decades. Estimates to harden the grid range from $200 million to $1 trillion plus, and this vividly illustrates the point. Massive bureaucracies such as the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense, Department of Energy are not suited to plan, then implement major, fast-track, true step-out projects such as this. It is counter-cultural. One might ask why the EMP community kept writing bills and presidential executive orders on these government departments when the outcome was all the same. Little of substance happened. Possible reasons for this repeated cycle to nowhere are discussed in a separate note. Accept the reality. You can't solve a problem until you are willing to face up to it, warts and all. The grid hardening project is complex. Paraphrasing, I heard a respected EMP commentator say that he's tired of hearing individuals defining the hardening problem only in terms of a narrow solution they understand or wish to promote. The next couple of slides address a few common, well-intended but misleading positions. Let us consider a few technical realities. It is often stated that we know what to do, so let's just do it. And this is a great sentiment, but it begs the question, do what exactly? Just having a wide selection of possible fixes is of no use until the optimal selection is put into a plan to meet clear objectives, and such a plan has defied conventional thinking for decades. Let me use a military analogy. The US has vast arrays of military weapons and defense tools spread over 5 military branches, but to address a specific threat requires great skill and strategizing to develop a battle plan. Some of the assets are better than others for the given situation, some are mutually exclusive. I suggest that the grid hardening battle plan is at least as complex. It is frequently proposed that partial hardening is better than nothing. Just protecting some key long lead items such as extra high voltage transformers would be useful after a localized attack, facilitating restoration by the rest of the country, but useless in a nationwide disaster. They would simply stand as pristine monuments to folly amongst all the devastation. Unless a system is protected in its entirety as specified in MIL Standard 188125, it offers no protection. It can be a small portion of the grid so long as it's protected generator to mouse, and I heard this pithy but accurate requirement from a general. Let's look at a bridge analogy. We'll consider this arch bridge as representing the three fundamental components of electric grid protection: generation protection, transmission protection, and distribution protection. A single buttress without the second buttress and the arch is useless in terms of enabling people and vehicles to cross the river. Whether the buttress, i.e. the generation segment say, is partially built or fully built, it is of no help without the other components. I'm not suggesting that the whole US grid has to be protected to be of value, simply that any selected portion has to be protected from end to end. Oh, and the forgotten bit, the whole bridge is useless until the roadway is in place. This represents the actual power users, commercial, industrial, military, medical, and residential users. Having the whole grid protected is similarly unusable at the time of a national attack if the users of the power are incapacitated, and this important fact is frequently overlooked. Islanding can be valuable, but the same comments regarding end-to-end completion apply. Looking at the Bailey Bridge, as used by the military in the lower picture, this can be built rapidly. It does not have the same carrying capacity as a conventional bridge, nor is it permanent, but it has real value in wartime emergency situations. Like the permanent bridge, however, it is useless until completed. The Bailey Bridge in the picture is of no practical value as it stands. It represents an electric island with a segment missing. What about, let's replace the existing grid with microgrids? This would cut out the need for the vulnerable transmission systems. In practical terms, the cost and lead time would be completely unacceptable. Microgrids certainly have a place and a future, however, especially for critical users such as the military. Replacing the grid would give the opportunity to replace fossil fuels with clean renewables. The sad fact is, when solar and wind power are evaluated as standalone entities without subsidies against, say, natural gas, they are seriously uneconomic. Solar does have a valuable place as a provider of long-term independent power, installable pretty well anywhere for emergency backup. Solar cell and energy storage efficiencies and costs will undoubtedly improve. Wind power is not so flexible, although a bit more economic. You sometimes hear small modular reactors are the answer, and these look very promising for use with microgrids, but they need proving in the field before being rolled out widely. There are many more examples of popular misconceptions. Protect what we have. Let's explore this briefly. Should grid hardening engineers embrace new and emerging technology? Now, the imperative is to make the grid and supporting infrastructures safe, i.e. hardened, as soon as possible. For this reason, it is contended that the approach should be to use proven components and technology as far as possible on the existing grid, especially for the initial hardening phase and probably the next phase. Some fast-track testing will still be required, for example on extra high voltage transformers. The innovation and clever engineering will be focused on deploying the established technology expeditiously, and this demand should not be underestimated. New and futuristic resilient grid technology should be developed in parallel with grid hardening and coordinated with the hardening, and this includes the near proven products such as small modular reactors right through to the more adventurous energy from space. But these developments must not be allowed to slow the grid hardening project. We'll now consider a radical but practical way forwards. The futile cycle where a bill or presidential executive order is written on government departments, little happens, there is much complaint, the process is repeated, must stop. Model the Manhattan Project or the Lockheed Skunk Works and set up an independent, lean, committed organization reporting to President Trump. And that organization should be empowered to establish a battle plan, which has proved so elusive to date, and this is in the development phase. Then the battle plan should be executed to establish a hardened national electric grid. This is the project execution phase. Now a little more explanation. This is the essence of the proposed development phase, the first of two fundamental phases. A true champion reporting to POTUS is key. A small special task force, very carefully selected, courageous, working in freedom is even more vital. They'll have more in common with a SEAL team than a conventional study team. A large support team would include EMP community members as well as power industry, government and vendor representatives. Most would be part-time but mandated to serve the special task force. Welcome to caution but not impede progress. This limit on the establishment's ability to block would eliminate a major frustration. An innovative but industry-proven methodology is foundational. And the development phase is the make or break portion of the hardening project. It is complex in that it has to be handled holistically. The deliverable is the battle plan, and this will be high level but technically and economically sound. The essence of proposed project execution phase is as follows. The battle plan, defined at high level during the development phase, will be converted to a much more detailed engineering execution plan. An appropriate project structure will be set up. The work on the national grid will then be carried out. This phase is demanding but more conventional, complicated rather than complex, and the deliverable is a hardened power grid. I would like to emphasize the following key points. The importance of achieving the battle plan should not be underestimated. The battle plan must be in sufficient detail to allow an order to be placed on the Department of Energy to execute the work, not figure out the fix, then execute the work. Expecting DHS and other government departments to work together and find the solution is part of the reason for failure in the past. A definitive execution order can be much more easily understood by all interested parties, monitored, enforced. The project execution is likely to be in phases, the first allowing the country to recover, albeit painfully, and subsequent phases providing increased resilience. Probably best carried out within the grid management structure. Facility managers are familiar with managing maintenance and upgrades in conjunction with central engineering support. May justify application of the 1950 Defence Production Act reauthorised in 2009, and the presenter will be pleased to explain and amplify proposals. Moving forwards. A pioneer champion, who may become the champion referred to previously, with access to the President, should step forward. Patriots from the EMP community with commitment, interest, objectivity and possibly knowledge of engineering project management should step forward. The key requirements, however, are commitment, interest and objectivity. The pioneer champion and patriots should plan how to get the right message to the President in order to get a practical grid hardening project underway. This step is particularly challenging since the Executive Order 13865, coordinating national resilience to electromagnetic pulses, and other directives ostensibly already cover this work, but as discussed previously, they're going nowhere. Prudent, practical and radical, A Leader's Guide to EMP Protection is a working document that goes into much more detail. Contact email is shown on the slide. Thank you for listening. God bless America.